Evening, and welcome to NYSILC's 5th Annual New York State Disability Rights Hall of Fame. We are thrilled to have you with us. My name is Denise Denoto, and I am proud to serve as your MC for this evening. These days, most of us are aware of how to navigate Zoom, but just in case, I would like to start by going through an overview of some of Zoom's features. All attendees are in listen-only mode for this evening's presentation. You will find the attendee control bar at the bottom of the screen, activated by moving your cursor. The sign language interpreter has been pinned to the top of your screen for the duration of our agenda this evening. In addition, closed captioning is available as an option in real time, and you will find this at the bottom of the screen by clicking on the closed caption button and choosing Show Subtitles. For accessibility purposes, the chat feature has been disabled. If you have any questions or technical difficulties throughout the presentation, please email NYSILC at adgcommunications.com, and a member of our team will assist you right away. If you are interested in congratulating this year's inductees, we welcome you to post your regards to one of our social platforms. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/New York State Independent Living Council, Inc., all one word, or on Twitter at twitter.com/New York State ILC. You can also find us on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/New York State Independent Living Council, Inc. Events like the Hall of Fame don't happen without support. We are thrilled to have a very engaged honorary committee. I would like to thank the members of the 2022-23 Honorary Committee. The committee was chaired this year by Denise Figueroa and Doug Uziak. Also on the committee, Marietta Austin, Matthew Coons, Chad Eldred, Barbara Goldstein, Beata Karpinski, Alan Krieger, Jan Lynch, Aileen Martin, Anthony Mignoni, Michaela Miles, Congressman Paul D. Tonko, Kathleen Vandeloo, and John Zick. We thank you all for your support of tonight's event.
Hi, my name is Brad Williams, and I'm the Executive Director of NYSILC. And I'm here to introduce our sponsor showcase. Congratulations to the very deserving 2023 inductees to the NYSILC Hall of Fame, Debra Bonomo and Kathy Lynch. Thank you for all you do for people with disabilities. ABLE logo, the newspaper for, by, and about the disabled. Read ABLE newspaper online, www.ablenews.com. There is no greater disability in society than the inability to see a person as more. Robert M. Hensel. Congratulations to the 2023 NYSILC Hall of Fame inductees. Thank you for inspiring us. Debra, Debbie Bonomo, and Kathy Lynch. ADG logo. Strategy, creative, digital, events, and management. Where nonprofits go to get things done. adgcommunications.com. Social media buttons. BCID logo. Brooklyn Center for Independence of the Disabled. Bill's logo. Bronx Independent Living Services. The following is a short video by the Center for Disability Rights, cdrnys.org.
Every day, the Center for Disability Rights works to ensure that seniors and people with disabilities are able to leave institutions. But today, more than 1 million seniors and disabled individuals remain institutionalized.
Imagine being a young person living in a nursing home. It's not easy. It breaks your spirit. I don't want to go back. I shouldn't have to.
CDR advocates have both helped individuals and led advocacy campaigns to fight for disability freedom.
I worked 15 years to get out the nursing home. Found this beautiful home. It's modified for me, and I don't want to lose it.
During the pandemic, 200,000 people in nursing facilities died from COVID. Many would have survived if they had been living in the community. Even so, we still lock disabled people away. Being disabled shouldn't be a crime, punishable by incarceration and death. Fighting for disability freedom is important, but it is just one of the things we do at CDR. Learn more about us at cdrnys.org.
Consumer-Directed Choices logo, empowering independence. Flick logo, Finger Lakes Independence Center, opening doors to independence. Congratulations, 2023 inductees. NYRCL logo, Northern Regional Center for Independent Living, your Disability Rights and Resource Center. NYSILC is proud to support NYSILC in recognizing and celebrating the accomplishments of the New York State Disability Rights Hall of Fame inductees for 2023. Debra, Debbie Bonomo, and Kathy Lynch. NYSILC logo, New York Association on Independent Living, www.ilny.org. The following is a short video by Piero, Connor, and Strauss, LLC, your trusted counsel, 518-459-2100, www.pierrolaw.com.
Trust is the firm belief in someone's reliability, honesty, skills, and strength. It's not a word we take lightly at Piero, Connor, and Strauss. For decades, thousands of families have entrusted us to protect their home, retirement, and life savings. They've relied on us to create their wills, trusts, and legal plans. They've depended on our estate planning experience to secure a legacy for their families. Let Piero, Connor, and Strauss be your trusted counsel. Life happens. Are you prepared?
RCAL logo, Resource Center for Accessible Living, Inc. Congratulations to all the inductees from all of us here at RCAL. www.rcal.org. Banner, 40 years, celebrating 40 years serving you. Your independence is our mission. 1983 to 2023. WNYIL logo, Western New York Independent Living, Inc. Family of agencies. Thank you again to all of our sponsors. Back to Denise.
Now, before we get to the Disability Rights Hall of Fame, we hope you will enjoy these clips from our 2022 event.
So this award recognizes doing what is right versus what is safe and easy.
Undertaking these struggles required faith that justice may be done and may be seen to be done.
And the ability for the centers to come together. I think everyone watching this can take partial credit for that. Because
Not one person can do it. It has to be all of us together.
I just hope to God we never free any other human being the way we treated the people in the past.
I hope we can reach out to the young people. Because I'm getting old. I can't do it forever.
When we honor our own peers, we set an example for future advocates.
we have really led by example, taking the discrimination that we've experienced and not just complaining about it, but actively looking at solutions.
It was better to work to change the world than to lower my standards.
There's a lot in the future that we're going to be fighting for.
We can never free anybody like that animal ever again.
And while we are not yet where we need to be, much of those accomplishments really need to be seen.
When we use our victories to teach the community, our allies, and the larger public that we are here and that we will continuously pursue justice.
Thank you for joining us from home.
It's the time you've all been waiting for. Finally, I would like to thank all of you for joining us this evening to celebrate this year's inductees. This evening, we will be honoring the achievements of Debra, Debbie Bonomo, and Kathy Lynch. Congratulations to our 5th class of inductees. These two will be inducted into the New York State Disability Rights Hall of Fame as the class of 2022-23. Our peers have been advocating their entire lives, and the arc of their achievements spans decades. Their individual bios can be found online at the NYSILC website under Programs, Hall of Fame, and Inductees. These bios help to capture the impact of their lifelong work. All inductees have received their Hall of Fame awards in advance of tonight's ceremony. The award is a black crystal wedge with a gold laurel leaf at the top, signifying achievement. Tonight, we will hear pre-recorded acceptance speeches from the honorees. So let's get started with tonight's induction ceremony.
I'm honored to introduce Debbie Bonomo, who's being inducted as part of the 5th class in the New York State Disability Rights Hall of Fame. Debbie is deeply deserving of this recognition. I want to start by saying how I met Debbie. I met Debbie when I was in college and working for the library system. She and Barb, another staff person at the Rochester Center for Independent Living, attended a presentation I was doing about the services available through the library. Because they took paratransit, they arrived way early. And so I got them coffee and made sure they felt welcome. Seemed like the least I could do. Then in the middle of my presentation about how great the library was, Debbie interrupted me, shouting from the back of the room, "If the library is such a wonderful place for people with disabilities, why with the largest per capita number of deaf people in the entire country does the library not have a TTY or TDD?" It was a fair question. And after agreeing with her that the lack of access was a problem, I threw the question to my boss. Shortly after that, I no longer worked for the library, but I found myself working alongside Debbie at the center. I didn't realize it at the time, but during the quick back and forth with Debbie, I had connected with someone who would become my longest and dearest friend, a mentor, and someone who would bring me into the independent living and disability rights movements. In the decades that followed, I had the opportunity to witness Debbie's commitment to the disability community, independent living, and the disability rights movement. I remember a day many years ago when we were working together at RCIL, and as she came into my office, her face was just beaming with joy because the man that she had been working with had just made his first call on his own, looking to get housing for himself. It doesn't seem like that's a huge accomplishment, but for him, making that call seemed like an impossible task. And although he was anxious, Debbie gave him the support he needed to make the call. He was thrilled himself. It might have been easier if she just did it. A lot of people would take that approach, but she didn't do things that were easy. She did what needed to be done to help people be independent. Consistent with that, Debbie sparked a major controversy in Rochester when she was the first person to publicly call for putting lifts on buses. Until then, everyone in Rochester believed that people with disabilities couldn't ride the bus. In fact, the transit professionals stated that only four disabled people in the entire city would use buses if they were accessible. And making the system accessible was just a waste of money. Debbie didn't just spark a controversy when she made that announcement about calling for lifts on buses during the public hearing for the Transit Authority. She started a campaign. A group of disabled people started to fight to put lifts on buses and worked tirelessly for a couple of years to make that happen. As a result of her work, RGRTA agreed to put lifts on all its new buses prior to the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act. She also brought people together for other forms of activism. Debbie has had a long career as an activist, both in ADAPT and Not Dead Yet. She fought for disability freedom and was arrested multiple times. A lot. And every time I have to just say, she'll need me to say this, she looked fabulous. I don't know how she managed that. She would be out there fighting for our rights and demanding that disabled people have the right to live in freedom, have the right to access buses, buildings, and to not be killed. She and her husband transported a group of folks from Rochester to Detroit, and every day was at the trial of Jack Kevorkian. Diane Coleman from Not Dead Yet said the group of folks there made a huge difference in ensuring that the outcome was that Kevorkian was convicted. She's traveled the country and she's made changes locally. And I think the thing that's probably really amazing is you don't ever know how what you do becomes something more and how many people you'll impact. That advocacy group that started because Debbie called for lifts on buses was just a small ragtag group of disabled folks called the Transportation Advocacy Group. And that group, which for a period of time was actually kicked out of the center and had to do its work independently out in the community on its own, evolved into the Center for Disability Rights. I can say with great certainty that if Debbie Bonomo hadn't done what she had done, if there were no Debbie Bonomo, there would be no Center for Disability Rights. And I look at all of the work that everyone here has accomplished in terms of helping to advance the rights of people with disabilities. And none of that would have happened if it weren't for Debbie Bonomo. Debbie served not only as an activist, she's been chair of our board of directors and has done that work despite incredible personal strain. She took care of her husband when he was alive. He had a stroke and needed round-the-clock assistance. Even so, her commitment to the broader movement and community never lessened. It is a great honor for me to introduce Debbie Bonomo, who's being inducted into the Disability Rights Hall of Fame. Go, Debbie.
Thank you, Bruce. And now here is Debbie Bonomo accepting her award.
This means everything for all the work that I was able to accomplish and be acknowledged for. I've had a lot of good people supporting me along the years. Can't tell how many. And that includes my husband, who provided the support I needed along the way. I'm just feeling really honored, and I am so pleased with what I was able to do. And to get the recognition from my own peers is just unbelievable. I am just feeling so honored. Growing up with CP in Ogdensburg, I didn't have the same experience growing up. So I had to do a lot of outreach and education because no one understood what it was like growing up with CP. And when I did expand on that thought, it was still very, very difficult. So I'm glad that I was able to reach out and educate people. Although at the time, I wasn't aware of what actually I was doing because, growing up in a small town, you don't get that full education because you're kind of guessing what you're doing. I tried to do educating the people in my base on what needed to be done. I didn't know about the lifts on the buses or what that was about, but I did try to get access for sidewalks, curb cuts. I did that and I thought, am I doing this right? But apparently some sidewalks did get put in. There were a few here and there. So I did make some sort of awareness to them. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm surprised today that I'm even able to do what I did and give it a name because I didn't know there was a name for it. That was fun. I mean, I think I was arrested 6 times, something like that. I remember being able to climb the governor's office, and that was a trip within itself. But I got the ability to be able to climb some of the steps that we did. It was good. I was able to make progress. The lifts on the buses enabled people to get from place to place. They weren't sure they wanted it at first. They were angry. Well, I don't know if angry comes about, but they sure didn't know what to think about with the lifts on the buses. But I thought it was a very good idea. I know when I went to New York City, I said, we've got to do this. And I didn't really give it a thought. I just thought, we got to do it because you can go where you need to go. You don't have to schedule a ride. You had to call transportation 15 days in advance, and that's if you got the ride. And that was just not doable. They wanted everything in a bubble. We don't live in a bubble. They had to really, I guess, think about it. I was happy with the decision, even if the services weren't available to everyone. They were available to many people, and that's what I wanted them to get a taste of what I thought when I went there. Because I don't know, I just thought we got to do it. And I didn't even give it a thought as to what's involved. The transit people just thought, you're crazy. We didn't really want to do it because when I called them out in a meeting, that was something they just weren't ready to handle.
Do you remember when you first saw a disabled person getting on a bus in Rochester and how you felt?
You know what? I do. Because he was a very good friend and he was wanting to get on the bus and make the point that we do need something like this. He actually crawled on the bus. He went up on the floor of the bus and actually transferred himself to the bus and got up there and just did it. And it was amazing. I really thought, you know what, this can work. This can happen. People were actually very accepting of him climbing the bus and getting on. They actually assisted him and it was a big deal. They actually saw what we were trying to prove, and it was amazing. After the protest, they decided that they were going to put the lifts on the buses. And I was actually very surprised that we were able to hit the important issue that just happened. I thought it couldn't be any better than what it was. It gave me great satisfaction. Couldn't believe it was happening. It was just satisfying. And also, I think at that time, the governor also began to work with us, working on not dead yet issues. That was an experience in itself, too.
You were at Jack Kevorkian's trial.
Yes, I went because people were being affected, and it didn't need to happen. They were talking to people before they were ready to be discharged from a hospital. They were kind of forcing people to choose. Really, what happened was I went there and I met him, and it was really overwhelming because I didn't expect him to, kind of reach out and say something actually to me, because he reached out and dealt with the issue of physicians' suicide. And he decided that he wanted to talk about the issue. I thought, let me do this, but I was kind of nervous because I didn't know what to expect from him. And when he looked at me, I had chills just going up my spine. I just tried to look the other way, but that wasn't working. I put the information down, and then I remember the judge saying, "You want to be stopped." He said, "Then consider yourself stopped." And she laid down the gavel. That was like just overwhelming. I'm glad to see it was done. I did help a group of people get transferred to the location where we needed to be. My husband drove. My husband drove and brought information, and we drove there, and we thought it would be a good thing for them to meet up with the issue so they could learn. Yeah, I was in the courtroom. I mean, I was out in the open, which was scary too, but I wanted to make an awareness about the issue, about what he was doing. It was easy for him to say, come on board. And I just felt like he was ready to do the killing that he wanted to do. And it was just unbelievable that such an animal could be part of the program, so to speak. He did stare at me for quite a while. The judge saw me too, and I think that had an impact on the decision. I and the crew were representing the people who were part of the trip that we organized, and we were there to help others understand what was going on. People with disabilities need to be able to live in the community, not just their home. They need to have a home to be in. We fought to maintain them for housing. People wanted to be in their own home, not something else that wasn't theirs.
What happened when Helen got out of the nursing facility?
Oh, that was interesting. I was able, when she was getting discharged from the hospital, I wanted her to be able to have things that she needed. So we put some things together so that she could have housing that would keep her warm, because we had to set that up. And it was something that needed to happen. And we knew that she needed support, and that's what we wanted to provide. The first night she stayed with me, it was awesome because at least I was able to support her to do what she needed to do. She needed something. She needed support. She needed just someone there to help her. And then, the next day we could work out setting up something for her. She was with me, and it was good. Helen loved being in the pizza arena, so we just put it together and we had pizza for dinner. At the last minute, my husband, I recruited him, helped me get Helen from point A to point B. He just did it. He didn't have any questions. He provided the ride and everything. I think at the end of the trip, the poor band kind of gave in, but it's okay because we were able to work things out. The van, it went to Washington. We took it to the co-working hearing. Oh my God, it just went so many places. My husband was so good about it. He just took it where it would go. It was amazing. When I first moved to Rochester, I didn't know anybody at that time in Rochester, and he kind of hooked me up with like rides to the independent living movement, and I got to know people there, and so we hooked up there and got rides going at an independent living center, and I found that I liked it, and that's probably part of my taste for what I was doing. It kind of turned it on, and I don't know if my husband would say, "Oh no, here we go again," but I think he was really good about it. He never said no. So I was just really lucky to have him. I did everything I could to keep him home so he would not end up in a nursing home. My husband was tortured as a person because of how he grew up. We didn't want to go that route. That was an issue that we did not want to happen. Other people, or Joe, my husband, he had a lot of problems with growing up with the system. So we didn't want to take him down that same path. And so we worked really hard to keep him where he would be comfortable. I didn't want people being stuck like that. It just wasn't the right thing to do. I miss a lot of them because there's a story for each one. I remember one being Cindy Thrush, who was a real who never knew what she was going to come up with. Charlie Smith was always right there, ready to offer a hand. Pat Carpenter and Shelley Karen, she also was real important to the movement. She, was one of our board reps, and she was really important. Everybody was just important to the movement. For a while, I was part of the recreation program thing, and I just jumped in, not even thinking about what they didn't or didn't need. I just went ahead and did it. Oh my goodness. It was, 3 times a week? I think 3 times a week. It actually just provided like a close group to make the issue close, that they had a family that they would remember, that they were important to what was happening. We did that for a good number of years. Not to forget to mention the pool, because everybody had to get in the pool. That was important too. I am so proud of what I've been able to do over the years, and also being able to help the people that I've done. I think for them to know that they were important was necessary. Well, right now, I am having metastatic cancer, so it's being treated right now, but things are kind of up in the air. So I've been trying to treat that. It's a new thing for me. I wouldn't change the story because I think it's important for them to know that you still have to go on. Well, I'm still on the board of CDR because if I don't do something, I don't want to go crazy. So being on the board is important. I need to be doing something. What else can you do? I'm glad to do that. Really happy to do that. And I'm glad that the people that I've left will leave behind will have something to stand by. I want them to go on and continue to make this a better place. Don't forget what CDR is about. We worked really hard to co-found the program, and I want to really see it move on and be successful. I want to thank them because this honor is for me very big, and I know that being a part of NYSILC is really important. I want to thank everyone for the award. I've had a lot of respect given, and I appreciate that, what's been given.
Congratulations, Debbie. This is quite an accomplishment. Next, I would like to introduce Maura Kelly, who will be introducing our next inductee, Kathy Lynch.
Hi, my name is Maura Kelly. I'm the Behavioral Health Peer Liaison for the West New York Independent Living. I have been involved in the mental health peer movement prior to becoming an employee of the West New York Independent Living in August of 1995. Prior to my employment at WNL, I was a person collecting federal disability deemed by our New York State vocational program as being unemployable due to my numerous psychiatric institutional stays. That was going to be my destiny. That was what my future held for me. However, in the early 1990s, I happened to attend a one-day class at the Mental Health Association. It was a class on advocacy and empowerment. This class was taught by Kathy Lynch and Michael DePiro. It was on that day that my entire life changed. I saw hope and inclusion in my life that was currently filled with trials, tribulations, despair, and a purposeless existence. Even today, with the advancements of improved quality of life for people with disabilities, and particularly people with mental disabilities, life can be filled with isolation, loneliness, and a sense of not belonging anywhere in our community, despite contrary evidence that says differently. But Kathy has instinctively and naturally spent her entire life fostering inclusion, support, and a sense of belonging for individuals like me. It's because of her core being and this natural instinct to bring people out of the darkness into the shining light that Kathy is such a profound individual and is such an appropriate awardee of this honor. I recently participated in a community's first revival of a consumer advisory meeting with suicide prevention and crisis services in Western New York. This agency is the central hub of the new 988 implementation that allows easier access to mental health support. Kathy attended in a supportive and advocacy role for many peers who risked sharing their experience with this vital service in our area. I introduced her to the fellow peers and the top administrators of crisis services as the mother of our movement. It has been since the early 1990s that Kathy has left her mark on the country, New York State, Western New York, and in my life. She has been and still is a powerful, influential figure in the mental health disability world. Kathy literally brought mental health recipients into our community through helping to shut down state institutions that house people deemed unfit for society. She educated the professionals, providers, administrators, policymakers on the importance of peer support, which led to the successful deinstitutionalization of thousands of people housed in Western New York and throughout the state. She contributed to the strong efforts to make and turn individuals with mental disabilities into community members that worked, raised families, and contribute to neighborhood activities and community events, just like other people in the country. Kathy was part of the implementation of the first peer-run community housing program in New York State, in collaboration with our independent living, Housing Options Made Easy, and the Gowanda and Buffalo State Psychiatric Centers. Kathy was a driving force in making trauma-informed care a main component of care for those with mental disabilities. Kathy made it known that 70% of people with mental disabilities are victims of trauma, yet only 2 to 3% pose a threat to our community. She demystifies the discrimination and unfounded fear our community has of those with mental disabilities. Kathy was the first out of the closet Western New York recipient of services that the State Office of Mental Health hired to be a voice for people with mental disabilities. Along with this prestigious, unheard of new position made by our state, Kathy brought along with her one of the most memorable coping tools I have seen in dealing with issues of mental health and trauma that so many of us struggle with. She brought to the table her puppets. In fact, she was featured in local television shows aired on early Sunday mornings, puppeteering to young children who could easily express themselves in a safe, loving manner to a friendly, furry animal, most notably through a puppet named Hippo. Yet despite this silliness and playful behavior, Kathy was a force to be reckoned with when it came to fighting for our rights, care, and voice in the delivery of services in local and state institutions. She organized in protests and picketing at the local hospital, which insisted on humane care and resulted in an established regular committee by the hospital to hear issues of concern and complaints from ex-patients and family members. Kathy is a community leader who shared the table with mental health housing treatment providers and gave input on state and local budgets. Kathy led by example and made sure she elevated our voice and pushed our advocacy issues, not just hers, forward. She literally did this. In fact, at a housing provider meeting, she sat next to me, and when the discussion was about homelessness, she knew about my experience of being homeless, and she physically pounded her fists on my back saying, "Speak up, speak up." And I did. I don't think I have ever stopped. This actually resulted in increased funding for more peer support and services and the beginning of a new service for homeless people. A drop-in center opened in the middle of the night for homeless individuals called Harbor House, which is still operating today. This is a key example of how Kathy's actions have been handed down to peer advocates who have come behind her and continue to impact our community. Kathy literally planted the seeds of our strong voice and community inclusion that we now exercise. At the request of the executive director of the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, Kathy came out of retirement from the State Office of Mental Health and implemented an impactful, effective program composed of peer services and peer staff, many former Buffalo Psychiatric Center patients, called the Self-Discovery Center. This brought people with mental disabilities living in our community and those still institutionalized together to work on transitioning, adjusting, and learning needed skills to become bona fide community members with the same hopes, dreams, and aspirations that should accompany any American citizen living in our country. Kathy, now back into retirement, is tirelessly advocating for the reestablishment of the Self-Discovery Center that has not reopened since the beginning of the COVID epidemic. These are only a few of the characteristics Kathy has that has made her an outstanding member of the 2023 Hall of Fame class. It is her character, her thoughtfulness, and her lived experience that has resulted in so many quality of life improvements for our community. Yet even today, she continues to instinctively foster inclusion, a sense of belonging, and hope to so many people, including me, into our community. I am forever grateful for the groundbreaking work that Kathy applied to our community. Surely without her spirit, ambitions, leadership, determination, I and so many of my brothers and sisters would not be contributing members of our community or even be alive today. I am proud to call Kathy my friend and fellow recovery journey traveler. I am reaping the benefits of her contributions to the disability movement, as so many are as well. It is with great honor that I am able to nominate and congratulate my hero, the mother of the movement, to the 2023 Hall of Fame class, Kathy Lynch.
Thank you, Maura. Here is Kathy Lynch accepting her award.
Hello, my name is Kathy Lynch, and I feel quite honored to be the recipient of this award. I usually know people at the end of the speech thank their family for their support, but in terms of mental health issues, a lot of our folks have been abandoned by family and friends once they were diagnosed. I also want to thank Doug Uzick for offering a position at the Independent Living Center after being unemployed as an RN for over 13 years. And a special thank you to Maura Kelly for nominating me for this award. I was quite humbled and also shocked, and I also felt very honored. Also, I wanted to thank, it's kind of unusual. There was a homeless veteran I was working with called Mitch. And Mitch and I used to help him out with a little money for coffee. And we would have maybe coffee together every now and then. And Mitch, I had mentioned that Doug Uzick had offered me this position. And having been on disability in and out of the hospital for many years, I didn't really feel I was ready. And Mitch said, Kath, you've been doing volunteer work with people with mental health issues over 40 hours a week. you're ready. He was one of my greatest supporters in terms of returning to work. I was blessed to work with Neva Walden, who has been my therapist. I don't like using the word therapist, but she's really been kind of like an individual who's accompanied me on my life journey and never steered me wrong. And she also was a major encouragement of my employment. I should talk a little bit about how I first got involved. In the 60s and 70s, I was a full advocate at the University of Buffalo, actively involved in the disability rights movement, veterans movement, the anti-war movement, the women's movement. I was a real movement person from the start. However, with my tendency towards bipolar disorder, all that activism put me over the edge because I was working at Roswell Park, midnights. I was going to school during the daytime and then participating in all these rallies in between. And eventually I just crossed over into full-blown mania, which resulted in my first hospitalization. But again, it was, as I mentioned to Maura, at first I was very angry with the several hospitalizations that I saw it as something like everything I worked towards, all was being destroyed. I was told I was going to be in and out of the state facility for the rest of my life. So I saw that as my future, and I saw all my education, all my work, it was meaningless. But when I ended up hospitalized at the Buffalo Psychiatric Center, and also with several hospitalizations at Erie County Medical Center, I realized there was a real strong need for a belief in peers helping peers, and also really feeling and witnessing a lot of abuse. I really felt it changed my career path. I channeled my energy into psychiatric nursing and really became actively involved in peer self-help. Peer self-help back then was AA. That was it. And maybe there was a group called the Recovery Group, but there was no peer psychiatrist at the time really believed that peers helping peers was detrimental to our well-being. So they discouraged friendships formed in the hospital or formed on the outside. We were blessed way back when Roger Stone at the Erie County Mental Health Association, in conjunction with B. Slick, who worked there, she knew several of us. They decided to start some self-help groups, one for people with schizophrenia and one for people with bipolar disorder. They caught quite a bit of flack from it. Doctors called, how can you have the sick helping the sick, And then all of a sudden, they recognized they weren't receiving as many crisis calls, that peers actually were helping peers heal. And that made such a difference. George Gillespie, he started the Unity Club for people who were labeled with bipolar disorder. And I was labeled with bipolar disorder, and he was on disability for over 13 years like I was. And he had gone back to school, and he was just completing his master's in social work. And then he eventually worked in the system. Well, that provided hope for me because at that point in time, I just, thought I was going to be in and out of hospitals the rest of my life. So anyway, I actively became involved in self-help. And also at the time, it was a time of the women's movement. And back then in the 60s and 70s, the American family was American pie. I mean, physicians didn't even recognize child abuse in families when they saw broken bones or bruises, and the same with domestic violence. It couldn't have happened in a family. So anyway, we really recognized a lot of people coming to the groups also were trauma survivors. So we got a lot of flack for that. Tasha Baxter and I started some trauma groups for women who had been sexually abused or had been victims of domestic violence. And at that particular time, the theory was if you were diagnosed with a serious mental illness, you sealed it over. You didn't go there because it would increase the number of episodes or hospitalizations. And we really shared a lot of our healing tools with each other. And we began to recover, and providers began to take notice, and Albany began to take notice, and a trauma task force was formed, and a lot of funding started to flow regarding trauma. we were the first agency when I worked at the ILC to have a peer hired as a trauma specialist to start self-help groups. That was really critical. That was important. And a lot of the research I've read now has really validated that there was a lot of trauma in many of the people who had received mental health services and weren't receiving appropriate trauma care for that piece of their disorder. So I feel very proud of that component because it helped me heal a lot of my peers, especially, like I said, Neva Walden, who accompanied me on my journey of healing, that she recognized that mind and body and spirit could not be separated. So she worked with mind, body, and spirit and encouraged me to seek out massage and a lot of to help heal my body. And that was something that really wasn't really addressed back then. When I worked with Doug, when I accepted the position, he enticed me. He said, you can write whatever you want in your job description as systems advocate in terms of mental health, So that was a major enticement. And he aided me certainly in learning how to write grants. Thanks to Doug for teaching me that, because it's really assisted me in my journey. When he first introduced me to the staff, they knew they were getting someone who worked in mental health as an employee. Doug knew about my work with some of the puppets, and I would occasionally break into a puppet voice. And Doug never knew when I was going to break into a puppet voice. But anyway, he introduced me to the staff. He very seriously, and he said, well, we now have a mental health systems advocate, and she's been diagnosed with a very serious and very rare disorder. And everybody was just sitting there with their mouths open. Rare disorder, what is it? And he said, Kathy suffers from multiple puppet disorder. It's something that there's no cure for. The puppets will be with me till the day I die. We used a lot of humor sometimes at the ILC when the serious issues came up, and I would use the puppets sometimes in my supervisory sessions with Doug. The puppets also were really important in my own healing, especially during COVID. When we were so isolated, my creativity, I created a lot of stories. In fact, we'll be having a storybook coming out prior to Thanksgiving about Hippo and his ventures. Been working with Margaret Umford as illustrator on that. My imaginary whatever, little playmates, in the morning kept me going. In the afternoon, I made a lot of phone calls to fellow peers. During COVID, it was a very isolating time, and a lot of folks, unfortunately, were tempted to turn to substance abuse and alcohol because they were so isolated, and it was a prior coping mechanism. So I felt a lot of those phone calls provided a lot of support during that particular time when folks were so isolated. I worked at the ILC for close to 3 years, and during that time, really wrote several grants to provide services by peers to fellow peers, and also a grant with For Nails, the Native American Living Center. But after 3 years, my work was kind of being acknowledged. Doug taught me about county resources and state resources, and so I became more active on the county and state level. And with our Western New York field office, Darby Penny, the state created this new position in Albany, the Bureau Recipient Affairs. And Darby had this idea of dividing up the state into various regions. So I received a phone call from her, and she had told me about this position. And she had asked me, Kath, would you throw in your hat for this position? And I thought about it. I thought, well, gee, Darby, I don't have too many good tech skills. And also a major impediment covering 19 counties was I didn't drive. I've got a neurological problem where I can't gauge distance. They put extra money in my budget so I could travel. So I did accept the position, and thanked Doug and the ILC for all the skills they gave me. And from there, I ended up working for the OMH Western Field Office. Dick Orndorff really believed, under Commissioner Searles at that time, he believed in the involvement of peers in the development of services. Richard Orndorff in Western New York believed the peers should have been involved in the county planning process, and he fought for that. But I worked with some wonderful people, Robin Myers, Dick Shirelli. Down the road, also fellow peers, Lorraine Washington, and someone who replaced me, Randy Hill, Native American, who at one time also worked at the Independent Living Center. So the Independent Living Center seems to foster a lot of other advocates in other fields. I worked with some wonderful people there, including our wonderful secretary at the field office, Judy Dentino. She was a phenomenal assistant. But I also really loved going out into the rural counties, doing a lot of town meetings, needs assessment, helping do trainings around peer self-help, getting self-help started, getting core groups started, core businesses starting. That was really exciting for me, starting peer-run businesses. The Buffalo Psychiatric Center, I also wanted to mention. I spent a lot of time, I was hospitalized there once, and I recognized the total lack of peer-run services. And we were able to, at the ILC, write the first grant for a peer advocate, which was Linda Zengel, to work within the facility. And then from there, the state was going to close Gowanda Psychiatric Center. And I mentioned to Stacy Calhoun, who was the acting director, that we could mobilize the peer movement in Erie County to make the transition more comfortable from a rural state hospital to a urban state hospital, which was very unsettling to a lot of the folks. That transition was so successful. She had mentioned, you can do anything you want to do here. Kat, you guys have proven your worth. You made the transition so much easier. And I got involved in a lot of BPC planning meetings, and Jim Ward, who was as Irish could be, we connected around our Irish heritage. And he and Brenda Matthews and I brainstormed this idea for a group that would be paid a stipend to work within BPC. And then we involved other peers and thus formed what was called the recipient associate managers, that really ran self-help groups, talked about recovery, offered hope to others, and provided a lot of skill building so folks could eventually live lives successful in the community. Anyway, so the Rams also became a force in the community in the Elmwood Village. We worked to establish a people first event at the Unitarian Universalist Church. The Rams also did a lot of surveys related to mental health in the community, because the county formed a committee on the impact of the increasing number of mentally ill people in the Elmwood Village. And we found out, we did these surveys, and had the Rams do these surveys, and we found out from talking to the business folk, it wasn't the mentally ill that were the major problem, it was the college students. We have Buff State nearby, and the college students were very rowdy and coming into the stores and making, kind of absurd demands on staff, whatever. So that was something the county and Elmwood Village learned by interfacing with peers, and also really built a bond between the Elmwood Village and peers, because they saw people as people who were making a major contribution to the community. I had talked to Maura and had mentioned I felt really kind of a little dissuaded, shall I say, by the county's approach to stigma campaigns, where it's educating people on mental disorders and how to interface with them. And I really took the opposite approach. It was like, you really reduce stigma by connecting with others in your community, providing a service to them. So, like I said, a lot of people got involved with our Easter Banner Parade, helped organize it, helped out with the Elmwood Village Arts Association. So became active partners, in the Elmwood Village, which helped reduce stigma more than anything else. We still intermittently have problems because the Buffalo Psychiatric Center has eliminated most peer programs from the psychiatric center right now. So we went from being considered the second top state facility in terms of peer-run services to almost having nothing other than just maybe a couple of peers working within the facility. The Center for Self-Discovery was something that Tom Dodson, after I retired from the field office, I was still volunteering at the psych center, and he came storming in at one time and said, "Pat, I need to talk to you." Pulled me out of the meeting and then said, "Kath, I have this idea. I want to start a recovery center." He said, "Would you be willing?" And at first I thought, I don't know, the state and state institutions, I know those bureaucracies, it's like, I think I would be stymied with everything I did. And Tom said, "Kath, with me as executive director, I'll remove as many roadblocks as I can." And that did it. He was really an exceptional executive director who fully supported the peer movement and what we decided to do, along with Jim Ward, and Brenda Matthews. And we really kind of got those Rams interspaced throughout the facility and also in the community. And BPC also under Tom Dodson, I had this idea, mainly because my therapist and I saw others who had used other methods other than group therapy, talk therapy, and medication to recover. So I had this idea for forming HAHA, Healthy Alternatives for the Healing Arts, which is an organization that provided complementary therapies, educated peers on the use of meditation, yoga, massage, drumming. So that was really important to me, the founding of those services. Other than the achievements, that I made, or people would ask me kind of what contributed to your success, I really wanted to say, there were so many people in my life that were there for me at critical minutes when I didn't believe in myself, that believed in me and encouraged me and saw my strengths when I only saw my flaws. The most important thing I've really learned in my life journey, and with the help of Neva and so many wonderful people in my life, the most important thing in life is your sense of belonging, your sense of connection, your sense of love, your sense of being loved and giving love, the ultimate sense of being kind to each other and respecting each other, which is so needed in our chaotic world today. So thank you very much. I want to thank you for this award. I feel very honored and very humbled. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Kathy. Your accomplishments certainly have improved New York for people with disabilities. This concludes the induction ceremony for tonight. Congratulations once again to Debbie and Kathy. You join your peers and we honor you for your accomplishments. Thank you for joining us tonight. As this video concludes, we hope you will stick around because coming right up is the drawing of our raffle baskets. Thank you and good night.